Dr. Death, the shocking crimes of Harold Shipman uncovered. Welcome to The Most Evil, where we delve into the minds of history's most notorious serial killers. Today we look at the terrifying case of Harold Shipman, often known as Dr. Death. Join us as we uncover the horrifying story of the British doctor who became the most prolific serial murderer in history, leaving a path of death and ruin in his path. Harold Shipman was born on January 14, 1946, in Nottingham, England. He grew up in a working-class home. His upbringing was ordinary, with traditional milestones and household rituals. However, beyond the mask of normalcy, there were tiny signs of Shipman's developing disorder. As a child, Shipman had a unique fascination with death and morbidity, spending hours reading over medical texts and indulging in gruesome talks with other people. Despite his strange obsessions, Shipman excelled academically and was praised by instructors for his brilliance and devotion. Shipman's interest in medicine expanded as he grew older, prompting him to pursue a career as a doctor. He enrolled in medical school and rapidly established himself as a successful student, displaying a sharp mind and a natural affinity for the subject. However, underneath this veneer of academic achievement lurked a darker truth. Throughout his medical education, Shipman demonstrated a problematic pattern of conduct marked by arrogance, manipulation, and a callous disregard for the well-being of others. He had a disconcerting lack of empathy for patients, seeing them as simple subjects to be experimented on, rather than as humans asking for compassion and care. After finishing his medical education, Shipman began his career as a general practitioner, establishing a practice in the tiny town of Hyde, Greater Manchester. He swiftly established himself as a respected part of the community, garnering his patients' confidence and appreciation with his kind manner and seeming genuine concern for their well-being. However, behind closed doors, Shipman's true personality began to show. Driven by a strong need for power and control, Shipman began to use his position as a doctor to realize his perverted dreams. He acquired a god complex, believing he was above the law and untouchable throughout his reign of evil. It was within the confines of his medical practice that Shipman would commit his heinous crimes, preying upon the vulnerable and the unsuspecting with impunity. His background, though seemingly ordinary, provided fertile ground for the seeds of his depravity to take root and flourish, ultimately leading to one of the most shocking cases of medical malpractice in history. Between 1975 and 1998, Shipman murdered an estimated 250 patients under his care, making him the most prolific serial killer in history. His victims, predominantly elderly women, were targeted for their vulnerability and perceived expendability. Harold Shipman's methods as a serial murderer were inseparably connected to his career as a doctor, allowing him to take advantage of the confidence put in him by his patients and the medical community. His actions were marked by a premeditated and systematic strategy, allowing him to go undetected for years while leaving a path of death and destruction in his wake. One of the most important aspects of Shipman's style was his ability to blend in and maintain a sense of normalcy. As a respected general practitioner in the small town of Hyde, Greater Manchester, Shipman looked to exemplify the epitome of a caring and compassionate doctor, garnering the trust and affection of both his patients and colleagues. However, underneath the facade of respectability was a terrible truth. Shipman had a profound craving for power and control, along with a callous contempt for human life. He regarded his patients not as persons deserving of care and compassion, but as puppets to be used and exploited for his own distorted ends. Shipman's mode of operation usually involves supplying deadly amounts of opioids, such as morphine or diamorphine, under the pretext of palliative treatment to relieve his victims' pain and suffering. Shipman was able to commit his horrific crimes without being caught because he took advantage of his position of trust as a doctor. Shipman's atrocities were precisely planned and carried out, with each murder expertly camouflaged as a natural death or medical issue. He would frequently change patients' medical records to conceal his activities, fabricating facts to make it look that they had died of natural circumstances. The manipulation of evidence made it impossible for investigators to discover any patterns or discrepancies in Shipman's behavior. Another important part of Shipman's technique was the choosing of victims. He mostly targeted older ladies who were viewed as defenseless and disposable. Shipman felt that by focusing on this group, he could commit his atrocities with little chance of detection, as their deaths would raise less suspicions. Despite his best attempts to avoid detection, Shipman's crimes were finally discovered. Due to the suspicions of colleagues, physicians, and worried family members who noted an unusually high number of fatalities while under his care. His capture brought an end to one of the most shocking cases of medical malpractice in history, but the consequences of his crimes would last for years. Shipman's misdeeds were investigated when colleague physicians and worried family members noted an exceptionally high number of deaths under his care. Despite Shipman's attempts to conceal his tracks, which included fabricating medical records and forging patients' wills, the evidence against him grew. The arrest of Harold Shipman marked the end of a lengthy investigation that encompassed various law enforcement agencies. Despite Shipman's best efforts to avoid detection, the increasing evidence against him finally led to his capture and punishment for his horrible acts. Harold Shipman's reign of terror ended abruptly on September 7, 1998, when he was captured by Greater Manchester Police. The arrest came after months of intensive inspection and monitoring by authorities, who had methodically gathered evidence against Shipman in preparation for his apprehension. Shipman was seized at his residence in Hyde, Greater Manchester, and put into jail without incident. Following his arrest, Shipman was exposed to extensive questioning by police detectives, who attempted to untangle the complicated web of deception and manipulation that had allowed him to avoid discovery for so long. Shipman maintained his innocence throughout the interview, denying involvement in the killings and attributing his patients' deaths to natural causes. Despite Shipman's claims to innocence, the evidence against him was overwhelming. The forensic examination of medical data and witness evidence formed a damning picture of Shipman's actions, demonstrating a pattern of suspicious conduct and anomalies that led to his guilt. Under January 2000, Harold Shipman faced trial for the murders of 15 people under his care. On January 31st, 2000, Harold Shipman was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life in prison. His conviction provided closure for the victims' families and marked the conclusion of one of the most tragic episodes of medical misconduct in history. Shipman's activities have left a lasting legacy of distrust and suspicion in the medical profession, forcing a reassessment of the measures in place to protect patients from harm. His story has also raised questions about the nature of evil and healthcare practitioners' ethical responsibility. As we end our investigation into Harold Shipman's life and misdeeds, we are left with a profound sense of horror and disbelief. His story is a disturbing reminder of the risks presented by people who utilize positions of trust for their own evil purposes. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content on true crime and psychological analysis. Remember to stay vigilant, and until next time, stay safe.